I was very disappointed in the Senate action today and perhaps approved an amendment that I find totally unacceptable. You know, we'll go back again on this issue, and we really should get beyond it and go to things that people care about, which is transportation policy and state operations and everything else, and still with all this little petty sideshow. And I'm disappointed that the Democrats decided to continue it rather than get it resolved. But the amendment that was passed by the Senate with overwhelming support from the Democrats was we go back and rescind, revoke the decision that I made legally and within the scope of the authority granted me by the legislature, signed into law, and which I think is eminently justifiable, and I can veto those arguments. But the point is, for the legislature to think they have the authority to go back and revoke an action that I took retroactively is, I mean, it's just unacceptable. You can't have a sensible government among adults, that kind of mayhem. And I said to the leadership yesterday and today that I would accept the Drazkowski amendment to the House bill. There's a plausible reason for that. If they want to talk about preventing this in the future, so that's the legislative prerogative. We can have that debate, discussion. But for them to come back in and imply that there was something wrong with what I did, and pass something revoking that, which again I exercise legally and clearly within the scope of my authority, is unacceptable. And I told them I'll veto the bill and make a send it back a clean efficiency bill. And if they finally want to get around to doing what they're responsible for doing, which is helping to run the state of Minnesota and helping the executive branch carry out its responsibilities, then fine, we'll go ahead and do that. If not, they're going to have to count the people of Minnesota for why they continue to persist with this. And I will say it was extremely disappointing to me to have the amendment proposed by the Senate Majority Leader, a member of my own party. And that's a separate matter. I'll deal with that one.
Governor, you were blindsided by this?
Yeah.
What does that say about your relationship with your fellow Democrats?
Very disappointing to me, because I thought my relationship with Senator Bach had always been positive and professional, and I certainly learned a brutal lesson today that I can't trust him, can't believe in what he says to me, and that he connives behind my back. And I met with some of the caucus, the Senate members, Democrats, just now, and told them I will have to construct a new way of my relating with his. With their caucus, because I'm not going to take the chance of dealing with him again directly and not having others in the room as well as others of his members to understand, because I understood from them, and I don't want to get into their dynamics. You should ask them to speak for themselves. But they were misled about what my position was on this when they had a caucus meeting last night. And the fact is that whenever this amendment was cooked up, I was not informed this morning about it, given the chance to see it ahead of time and comment on it. I made it very clear that I would not accept something like this, totally oppose it. The other members of the Senate, with whom I met this afternoon, indicated they were not aware of that.
Governor, was Senator Bach in the room today?
No.
So he didn't show up for a meeting that you requested to talk with?
He didn't. He wasn't at the meeting. I mean, there were a number of senators. How many were there? About 8?
Well, was he invited, Governor?
I didn't invite him. He knew about it, but I didn't invite him.
You purposely uninvited, did not invite him.
We did not send him an email informing. I asked for the meeting, asked the members to meet with them, not a caucus meeting, but to meet with them and members of their caucus. Talked to a couple, sent an email out to say the meeting was canceled. We sent out another email saying that I was going to be there for the meeting, and some of them showed up. And I'll meet with them with Senator Bach. I'm fine doing that. But I'm not going to meet with Senator Bach anymore without most of them present, because I don't trust him. I can try to rely on his word. I don't trust that he can, that he'll tell the caucus what my position is. And this is very unfortunate for me and for the Senate DFL caucus and for the the DFL organization in the state of Minnesota. But it also goes beyond that now. Again, am I going to be given the unfettered authority to run state government and make executive decisions, such as salary levels, within the scope of the law, within the scope of the budget that's been passed? Or are they going to, come back and try to undo or rescind retroactively anything I've done that they don't have to agree with? That's just, that's just the balance of power here. The legislative and executive branch, that's just way out of line with what they're trying to do.
Are you confident your veto will hold up? I mean, this is a fairly sensitive topic. You've got Ebola stuff and sex offender stuff on one side versus a pay increase on the other one.
Well, I don't have a vote. They each get one vote. I mean, it's not either or. I'm going to tell them in advance that they should take the bill back and straighten it out and bring it to, send it to me. And if they choose to pass it with the Senate language, I'll veto it, and then I'll send them the next day a clean deficiency bill that they can pass without this extraneous material attached to it. If they want to get serious about sharing the responsibility to run the government, the state of Minnesota, for the benefit of the people of Minnesota.
Governor, why is it so important that your commissioners get salaries and putting at risk the money for St. Peter, the money for DNR, the money for the hospitals that helped out with Ebola? Why is that so important?
I'm not putting that at risk. We made the case there with the committee process. All they have to do is send me a clean bill that addresses those needs. Or, and given the logic of the House Republicans, and I'll let them speak for themselves, but I told Speaker Dowd when we talked last night that I could accept the Drazkowski amendment language, but I cannot accept somebody coming in and provoking what I did. It implies that I did something, this is not about the lottery. Did I exceed the executive branch exceeded the authority that the legislature granted? It's not that at all. I mean, they passed the law. They gave me the authority to set the salaries up under the 164,000 cap, and top salary is 155,000. They think it's too much. That's their prerogative. They disagree with it. They can say so. But to come back in and A, imply that I did something wrong, and then B, to say that they can go in and undo a decision that I made lawfully within the scope of my authority, it's just unacceptable.
Governor, you said
And
that.
I don't think Minnesotans will see what Minnesotans have to say about it.
Governor, you said in your meeting with Senate DFLers that some of them implied they were misled as to your stance on this.
I don't want to use the word, I shouldn't use the word misled. They said they were not aware of it, of my position on it. That they were led to believe that my position was in support of the amendment, which I didn't see it at all. I'm told that the amendment, members of the House leadership, of the Republican leadership, saw it earlier this morning. So I don't know that. You have to ask them. But the fact is, Senator Bach did not call me this morning. Made no attempt. Nobody in the staff made an attempt to call me or call my staff, and he said, heads up, or this is the language we've worked out. Is this agreeable or not? I just find that just beyond comprehension, frankly.
Anything else?
Who did you meet with?
Just now?
Yep.
Senator Stevens, Senator Apples, Senator Goodwin, Senator Eaton, Senator Carlson, Senator Dibble. That was it.
Governor, there are bigger bills than this deficiency bill, obviously, that will be before the legislature. How does this bode for the rest of the session, given that you're having a fairly major disagreement with the Senate Majority Leader this early on?
Well, I said to the Senator said, I know how President Obama feels. I'm confronted with two hostile bodies of the legislature, one with a leader who I believe I can trust, Representative Dowd, and one who I now know I can't trust. And it's a terrible position. I didn't create that dynamic, but I'll deal with it, and they'll have to deal with it. We'll have to work through it and get back on track and get back to the issues that are important to Minnesotans that they and I got elected to deal with. And but I made this offer before in the past, and when it's accepted, we're go off together and work. And Speaker Dowd indicated to me last night, repeated his desire to do so, and I take him at his word. But my mother used to say, actions speak louder than words. And somebody's actions contradicted words, then I know which one.
So you're telling us that you trust Speaker, the Republican Speaker of the House, who's hostile, I mean, whose body is generally hostile to you, and not your own Democratic majority?
I've been given no reason to distrust anything that Speaker Dowd has told me. I found him so far to be a man of his word. And we're going to disagree. We both said that. We expect that. I expect the Democrats in the Senate to disagree here in the House. And that's the nature of the process. But if I make it very clear what I can accept and what I can't, we've been understanding that we had an agreement with that. If there's any doubt about what the specifics of the agreement are, there was a lot of time between yesterday and noons today to call me up and say, here's the language that I'm going to offer, and these are the reasons why, and can you live with that or not? You can still do it, but at least I would expect the decency of a phone call.
Governor, do you think there's anything more here at play than the pay issue? There's been some speculation that Governor Vaught was upset about the capital space agreement.
I'm not going to speculate on his motives. You have to ask him what his motives are. I'm frankly mystified as to what they are, but I'll let him speak for himself.
Have you two spoken since?
I talked to him after the bill was passed.
And said what?
Good afternoon, how's the weather?
I'm sure it was much more pointed than that.
It was.
The Senate Majority Leader said that he spoke to you last night about the salary issues and discussed various options, and then when you called him after their vote, that you were seriously unhappy. How would you describe your conversation yesterday?
I didn't talk to him last night.
You didn't?
No. I talked to Speaker Dowd last night. I called him and he returned the call. We had a very cordial conversation. I met with the House Republican leaders, House and Senate, this morning at breakfast. And repeated my concern that this thing would be destructive to our relationship if it continued. And I didn't get any promise or anything, but I think they got the message.
Have you discussed this at all with?
That we had the breakfast yesterday morning, and I didn't talk to us. Any indication from the staff that it was forthcoming? So I did not speak with him last night. And he did not call me this morning. I called him after the bill was on the floor. We found out just blindsided that the bill and his amendment were on the floor.
Remind us a little more about the history of getting us to this point. The Compensation Council recommended in 2003 this kind of increase be made available. Did your administration then push for that, or was that something that the legislature took from the Compensation Council?
What was the origin of the Compensation Council? I didn't go, but I can't. I know they came out in the early 2013 session. And Dick Cohen, the speaker, he recounted this for me. He was on it. The 3 Republican legislators were part of it, and they unanimously recommended that the salaries be set for the various constitutional officers, for the executive branch heads, for the legislative judges, and for the legislature. And the specific recommendation for the constitution for the commissioners was 133% of the governor's salary. It wasn't a range. It wasn't about one commissioner or another. It was commissioner salary. We recommend being 133% of the governor's salary, which is $164,000. And the law passed said that I had the authority within the scope of that limit to set their salaries. And that passed in 2013, and obviously passed with a majority and signed into law. And again, if people want to look back and say, well, we think we made a mistake, they're entitled to do that. And we'll propose legislation to change it in the future. Go back, first of all, and say that I did something in violation of the law, or something that usurps my authority on the law, I just categorically reject. And to say that I did something that was not the sound principle of running a state government, given these salaries have not been raised for over a decade, and given that these are really talented people, most of whom have worked for the last 4 years with no salary increase, or very minor salary increases. And given the comparison with local government salaries and other government salaries around the state, with private sector salaries, with the salaries that the House leadership had disapproved after they became the majority, mean, there's abundance of evidence that makes it very clear to me that what I did was necessary to keep good people and was proper and you know, my responsibility is to run the executive branch of state government as I believe is right and necessary and in the best interest of the people in Minnesota, as we pointed out. Yesterday, Commissioner Justin saved the taxpayers in Minnesota over $1 billion. Well, if I pick somebody off the street for a fraction of her salary who doesn't have her same commitment and ability and knowledge of how to work the intricacies, you know, that money would not be saved. So if people want worse government, that's one philosophy of how to approach this. Mine is be responsible and do what is right. I can't do that by myself. We need a team of people. We've got a great team. We've got a great team of commissioners. Most of whom have signed on in another 4 years. And they deserve it. They earn this money. They deserve the raises. And again, you know, if people already voted, and they gave me the authority last fall to act on behalf of their interests within the scope of the law and ethics, and I've done all that, and then to have them have a majority leader of the Senate come in and stab me in the back and blindside me, which is absolutely unacceptable.
Okay, thank you all.